It's great to be here in this sporting arena. I've always been a lover of sports. But here's a sporting experience I would never want to have. Imagine being thrown into a game without knowing when it had started, when it will finish, what the objective of the game is, or what any of the rules are. What would you do? You'd probably ask the other players around you to answer those 4 questions. What if they answered with many different answers? Or what if they simply carried on playing, uninterested in your question, looking at you oddly for even asking it? Well, you'd probably then try to find a coach to answer your questions. But what if you saw the coach on the sidelines and he's looking at the chaos and he's just saying, "Great job, everybody, you're all doing fantastic. I've got a first place trophy waiting for all of you." Well, then you'd probably try to find the referee or the umpire for definitive answers to your questions. But what if you learned that the players didn't like the calls that he or she was making and sent him home? It is our knowledge of the start, the finish, the objective, and the rules of a game that provide us with the freedom to play it and enjoy it in a meaningful way. If you don't know the answers to those 4 fundamental questions, all you can do on the field or on the court is pretend and hope that no one notices that you have no idea what you're doing or why you're doing it. Sadly, this is not just a game. This is real life. Many people are deeply confused about the answers to these 4 fundamental questions, which Ravi has delineated. Questions of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Where did we come from? Where are we headed? What is the purpose of life? And how should we live in light of it? How many of us can say with confidence that we have answers to those questions? How many of us are pretending our way through life? When I started college, I didn't think that Christianity had much to offer when it came to the deep questions of life. As a freshman, I was challenged to read the Bible for the first time. I was always up for a challenge, so I began to read through, trying to disprove it. And I would cross things out and I would add things. I'd write a big BS in the margins wherever I disagreed. And Christians would look over my shoulder and they'd say, "Vince, why do you have a BS in the margin of your Bible?" And I'd say, "Oh, that verse makes for a great Bible study." That's where I started. But things changed for me because I met a group of Christians who didn't spend their time tearing down my views. They had more confidence than that. They weren't afraid of my questions. They had this crazy idea that their God was big enough to handle my questions. And so they welcomed my questions and they invited me to seek answers together with them. I think we live in a very difficult time in history to seek answers when it comes to the deepest questions of life. There are many reasons for that, but I think one of the reasons is because we've become fearful of truth. Wasn't that long ago that The Economist suggested we live in a post-truth society? Shortly after that, right at the end of 2016, Oxford English Dictionary made post-truth its word of the year. Why have we become afraid of truth? Well, I think in part it's because experience has taught us that seeking truth leads to disagreement. And the fear is that disagreement will start you on a trajectory that will eventually lead to devaluing the people that you disagree with, and then to intolerance, and then to extremism, and then to violence, and ultimately to terrorism. And if that's the trajectory of truth, if truth starts you down a path that ends in extremism, violence, and terrorism, then truth is an act of war. And an act of war leaves you with only 2 options. Either you fight or you flee. Either you fight for truth and become a terrorist in the making, or you flee from truth in the name of love. Truth or love. I think that's the cultural ultimatum that we are living in. Jesus refused to make that choice. Jesus refused to choose between truth and love. That's one of the things I love about him. That's one way to understand the central message of Christianity. In fact, Jesus' ultimate communication of truth was in and through his very act of sacrificially giving his life for others. In his death, he communicated the truth about who we are, a people in need of saving, and the truth about who he is, a God loving enough to save. Love and truth perfectly united in a perfect sacrifice. And so if you are a Christian here tonight, I think that raises a really challenging question. Who are you giving your life for in order to be able to share the truth with them? I think every Christian needs to be able to answer that question. Let me put it in even starker terms. If the only way for the person sitting next to you to come to know and embrace the truth was for you to die, would you give your life for them? Jesus came and sat down next to us, and the only way for us to be united to the truth was for him to die. And he accepted that cost. He thought it was worth it for you and for me. For those of us who are Christians, I think the truth of our message will not be persuasive until we love others enough to be willing to give our lives for them, just as Jesus gave his life for us. How does all of this affect our discussion for tonight? Well, it means that I'm not interested in fighting and I'm not interested in fleeing. I'm not interested in fleeing from the truth for the sake of avoiding controversy. I think too much is at stake. But I also have no interest in fighting to win a debate just for the sake of it. What I want to do is figure out what questions every one of us needs to answer in order to live a coherent and a captivating life. And then I want to see if we can make some progress together, hopefully in a way that unites us rather than divides us. Isn't that the purpose of the university? To seek unity amid diversity. University. Let's start with origin. Where did we all come from? For a long time, my assumption was that Christianity offered the crazy answer to that question, and science offered the sober, sensible, rational answer. I've changed my mind about this, and here's why. Consider big picture explanations of the universe. How did all of this get here? There are only three primary options. Number one, God made it. Now, I might just put my hand up and say that's a pretty incredible option. But what exactly are the alternatives? Alternative number two, the universe just popped into existence from nothing for no reason whatsoever. Well, this too is a really incredible option. The physical stuff in our everyday lives doesn't generally just pop in and out of existence. If it doesn't now, why should I think that it did at the beginning? Option number three, the universe has always existed, extending infinitely back in time without any explanation. Well, now, perhaps each part of the universe can be explained by a part that came before it, but we still have absolutely no explanation for why there is a universe at all. This, too, is very odd. I call this the normalcy of the supernatural. These three options, they exhaust the relevant alternatives, and every single one of them is absolutely extraordinary. Every single one of them is well outside the realm of the ordinary. And even if you decide, you know what, I can see that all three of those options are a bit crazy, so I'm going to remain agnostic. I'm not going to commit myself to any of them. Well, it's still the case that logically you are committed to one of those three things being true. And that is just as crazy. The conclusion, I think, is that we live in a miraculous world. It doesn't matter whether you're a theist, an atheist, or an agnostic. I don't think anyone can get around that fact. Every one of us is committed to believing something extraordinary. I was reminded of this a number of years back when I received an email from an old friend of mine, a retired Princeton University professor in the history of science. And he was detailing some of his objections against Christianity. And then in the last line, as if to trump all other arguments, he wrote, "Nor can I believe in a virgin birth." No further argument, as if to say it would be crazy to believe in such a thing. And I began drafting an email back to him, trying to persuade him that maybe he could believe in a virgin birth. And then it dawned on me, he already does. Everyone believes in a virgin birth, whether they realize it or not. Let me explain. Christians believe that Jesus, as God himself, was born of a virgin, miraculously. Now, admittedly, that is out of the realm of the ordinary. But what exactly is the alternative? Take the brilliant Cambridge physicist Stephen Hawking's attempt to provide an atheistic birth of our universe. He says the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing, why the universe exists, why we exist. Is that any less miraculous of a birth than the birth of Jesus? Hawking's proposal looks a lot like a virgin birth to me. Or consider the words of the prominent atheist philosopher Quentin Smith. This is a man with 12 books, over 150 peer-reviewed articles to his name. And here's what he has to say. He says, "The fact of the matter is that the most reasonable belief is that we came from nothing, by nothing, and for nothing. We should acknowledge our foundation in nothingness and feel awe at the marvelous fact that we have a chance to participate briefly in this incredible sunburst that interrupts without reason the reign of non-being." That definitely sounds like a virgin birth. Again, I think we're led to the same conclusion. We live in a miraculous world, and there is no getting around that. It's not a matter of whether we believe in a virgin birth, it's just a matter of which virgin birth we choose to accept. We can believe in the virgin birth of an atheistic universe that is indifferent to us, a place where there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference, as Richard Dawkins has put it. Or we can believe in the virgin birth of a God who loved us so deeply that he came to live among us and to be born beside us, to call us family and to call us friends. The exact opposite of blind, pitiless indifference. Someone who is not blind to anything about you and yet loves you. Someone who is not indifferent to anything about you but cares for you in every single detail. Someone who knows you in absolute full and yet loves you in full. What an incredible gift. Morality. Most of us believe in morality. We believe it's a real thing. We think that some things are good and some things are bad. We think that some things are right and some things are wrong. We believe that every single person should be treated with dignity and respect and fairness. We hold it to be self-evident that all people were created equal. At the foundation of the morality that we believe in and that we're grasping for is the belief that all people are equally valuable. But then that raises a question. For all people to be equally valuable, there has to be something which is equally true of every single person. What is it? What is the thing that is equally true of every single one of us and that cannot change and that therefore can ground the equal value of every single person, which is at the foundation of any plausible morality? It is surprisingly difficult to answer that question because all of our natural endowments are distributed along a spectrum. Some people are less intelligent than others, less happy, less wealthy, and less healthy. Some people are less useful for society, less good-looking, less capable of passing on their genes. And all of these things, they all change over time. So what is equally true of every single one of us and completely unchanging? Only one thing, the love of God. And not just any God. There are a variety of gods out there that say, I will love you if you're good enough, or I will love you if you believe in me. No, I'm talking about the extravagant, unconditional, no ifs love of the Christian God, which is for every single person and which cannot be earned and cannot be lost. Christians call it grace. It's my favorite word. It means unmerited love. The philosopher Robert Adams puts it this way. He says, grace is a disposition to love which is not dependent on the merit of the person loved. A gracious person sees what is valuable in the person he loves and does not worry about whether it is more or less valuable than what could be found in someone else he might have loved. Early on in our dating relationship, my wife Jo, at one point, she was a bit blinded by love, and she turned to me and she said, Vince, I don't deserve you. And I looked at her and I said, no, you don't. Bad move. Not recommended. Thankfully, I didn't start there. I said, no, you don't. And I don't deserve you either. Isn't it wonderful? How could we ever deserve another person as our very own? Surely that's beyond what any one of us could ever deserve. Love at its best is not about what we earn or merit or deserve. It's about grace. And I like that type of love. It's the type of love that means you don't always need to be looking over your shoulder or around the corner wondering if someone more worthy of love than you is going to come along. It's a love that's secure, and therefore it's a love that you can stop competing for and just enjoy. I wonder what the honest answer of your heart is to that question. Do you compete for love, or do you enjoy it? What if before the foundation of the world, God loved every single one of us with grace, with love that is a gift, with love that cannot be lost, with love that is exactly the same on your best day and on your very worst day? With the love of a parent staring down on a newborn child. That child can't do anything to earn the parent's love, and yet the love could not be more extravagant. The question, why do you love your child? It doesn't even make sense to the parent. What do you mean, why do I love my child? That's my child. I created him. He's in my image. He has my nose. The love of a parent who sees a son far off on the horizon, a son who took the family's money and went off and spent it on everything you're not supposed to spend it on, a son who did everything wrong, and yet the father sees that son while he's still far off, and he just takes off running like an embarrassing fool, and he runs to the son, and he throws himself on his son, and he kisses him, and he hugs him, and he gives him his robe, he gives him the family ring, he gives him sandals on his feet, and he yells back to the family and says, kill the best animal, we're throwing the biggest party you've ever seen, because this son of mine was lost, and now he's found. This is love that's not supposed to be earned. This is a love that is simply supposed to be returned. What if God loves us like that? That you are loved by God is the one and only thing about you that could never change. That is why it gives you your identity. And that is why it is the only truth that can found the equal value of every single person, which is at the foundation of any plausible morality. Meaning. A while back, I was on a university campus in Chicago, and on the way into the event, we had these whiteboards with different questions, and one of our questions was, what is the meaning of life? And across the top, we had different options: personal success, to find love, no meaning, to pass on your genes, to have power and influence, to achieve your goals. And students would confidently walk up to this board, and they would take the marker, and then they would stand there, and they would stare at it, sometimes for minutes on end, just paralyzed. Many of them had no idea how to answer that question. And I could hear the Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl in my head. People have enough to live by, but nothing to live for. They have the means, but no meaning. People have enough to live by, but nothing to live for. They have the means, but no meaning. What is the meaning of life? What does it mean for something to have meaning? Does this collection of letters have meaning? Well, it depends on whether someone put these letters side by side intentionally in order to communicate something, or whether it's just a random collection of letters. Meaning relies on intelligence and intentionality. My baby niece Camille's first word was Dada. And my brother was so proud. And then I walked into the room and she said, Dad, 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 Dad. And then the cat walked into the room and she said, Dad, 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 Dad. And then a cockroach walked into the room and she said, Dad, 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 Dad. And then my brother was no longer proud. Randomness is the enemy of meaning. Even if something appears to have meaning, it might not if it's not intentional. Even if something looks meaningful, it is only actually meaningful if it is the result of the intention of an intelligent being. Was our universe intended? Over the last 35 years, what's called the fine-tuning argument has strongly suggested that it was. Here's how. The universe we live in could have taken many different forms. And scientists have approached a consensus, not just Christian scientists, but scientists in general, that there are dozens of fundamental features of the universe that needed to be precisely the way they are for life to be possible. Not just life as we know it, not just life on the planet Earth, but any form of life anywhere in the universe. Take just one example. The explosive force of the initial expansion of the universe for life to be possible had to be within 1 part in 10 to the 60th of what it actually was. In other words, the percentage difference you could have while still accommodating life is a 0 followed by a period, followed by 57 zeros, followed by a 1. If the initial expansion had been just the slightest bit weaker, gravity would have made the universe collapse back in on itself almost immediately, far too quickly for any form of life to develop. If the initial expansion had been just the slightest bit stronger, particles would have dispersed literally into thin air. They would have dispersed so quickly and wound up so far from each other that all we could have got would have been cold, simple molecules, nothing like the sort of complex chemistry required for any form of life. Sir Roger Penrose, emeritus professor at Oxford, one of the world's leading mathematical physicists, he estimates that the overall difference you could have is 1 part in 10 raised to the power of 10, raised in turn again to the power of 123. I would write that out as a percentage, but even if I could change all of the matter in the universe into paper, I would still have far too little paper to print the required number of zeros. In fact, I would need more zeros than there are particles in the universe. Sir Fred Hoyle, the late Cambridge astronomer, one of the 20th century's most significant scientific thinkers, he compared the random emergence of even the simplest cell to a tornado blowing through a junkyard and just happening by chance to produce a perfect Boeing 747 airplane. These are the sorts of odds we're talking about. What explains this incredible precision in the universe? Imagine that by this point in the talk, you are unbearably bored. Hard to imagine, I know. You're unbearably bored, and so you break out a deck of cards. You start playing poker with the person sitting next to you. And in the first 12 rounds, they get 12 straight royal flushes. What should you think? How dare you insult your neighbor like that? Yes, of course, they're cheating. Why? Because even if the person sitting next to you is a very honest person, it's so incredibly unlikely to get 12 straight royal flushes just by chance that someone must be messing with the cards. Even if you thought there was only a 1% chance that the person sitting next to you would cheat, if you saw them get dozens upon dozens upon dozens of royal flushes, one after another, you would have no choice but to conclude that someone was carefully arranging the cards. Scientists tell us this is exactly what's going on in our universe. One royal flush after another. Could it be that the evidence warrants the same conclusion? Someone got their hands on the cards and carefully arranged the system. Someone designed the universe.
You've been watching Let My People Think with Ravi Zacharias. We're grateful for your prayers and financial support. If you'd like to know more about this ministry or would like to donate to our efforts, you can call us at 1-800-448-6766 or visit us online at www.rzim.org. You can also stay connected to RZIM through Twitter and Facebook. Our mailing address is RZIM, Post Office Box 1820, Roswell, Georgia 30077.
RZIM Academy is RZIM's online learning platform, and the brilliant thing about it is that the Academy allows people to learn from our amazing team of global speakers in the parameters of their own lives and jobs and families and responsibilities. The focus of the Academy is very practical. It comes down to having one conversation at a time, learning to ask good questions, learning to really listen to the people around us as we have conversations in our own life. It brings together people from all around the world. Students have the opportunity to learn from fellow Christians from different countries and different backgrounds and different cultures as they all come together around the content in a learning community that really encourages good conversation. For more information and to register for the next course, go to rzimacademy.org.
People are interested in having a spiritual life, but treat faith more like an a la carte menu at a restaurant, choosing what they like and dismissing the rest. Cutting through the hype and seduction is the clear voice of author and apologist Ravi Zacharias in his book, Why Jesus? Rediscovering His Truth in an Age of Mass-Marketed Spirituality. Ravi answers the attraction known as the New Spirituality. Billy Graham calls Why Jesus a powerful defense of how Jesus Christ brings meaning and hope to an individual life. And Charles Swindoll says, I'm not acquainted with a brighter mind or a more relevant and devoted defender of the faith than Ravi Zacharias. Why Jesus is available in bookstores now or online at rzim.org. Let My People Think is a listener-supported television ministry and is furnished by Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, Atlanta, Georgia.